During the summer of 1994, independent record label Epitaph witnessed the punk rock dam break. 4 bands would push the genre into a wave of sales and critical acclaim. The heaviest hitter amongst them was Dookie by Green Day, exploding them from a silly lo-fi act into masters of relatable ballads turned into raging choruses. Next up, Offspring's Smash, an album that remains as the best-selling independent album of all time. Just as Green Day had, The Offspring took their breakneck speeds and slowed them into poignant tributes to cheating spouses or the gang violence taking place throughout LA. The other 2 albums would be Rancid's Let's Go, for some token ska representation, and most importantly for today's story, NoFX released the most acclaimed and recognized album of their career, Punkin' Drublic. Drublic marks a turning point in lead singer Michael Burkett, or as he'd rather be called, Fat Mike. Mike would see massive success from songs like Linoleum and Leave It Alone, and NoFX began getting talked about by major labels just how Green Day had been only a year before. This should have been great news for an indie band in their place, and yet, Fat Mike would decline all advances brought on by labels, and even refused to allow NoFX songs to be played on the radio. Mike despised the wave of support coming to what he believed should be an exclusionary, underground culture. Many bands outside of punk might consider it ritual suicide. When following up Drublic, rather than making a second bubblegum skate punk release, they created one of the most abrasive albums of the decade, Heavy Petting Zoo. Featuring unmarketable cover art depicting a man engaged with a lamb, the album utterly flopped on its face. The vinyl insert would proudly proclaim, "No thanks to MTV, quit bugging us. Major labels, quit bugging us. Commercial radio stations, quit playing us. We've been doing just fine all these years without you, so leave us the fuck alone." Just as NoFX turned on the music industry, listeners would begin turning against NoFX. Their tonal shift from being one of the big 4 to one of the most hated bands of the era is thanks to Fat Mike's lack of reliance on Epitaph Records, due to the creation of his own record label, Fat Wreck Chords. Fat Wreck would later permit NoFX's trademark sound of skate punk mixed with pop punk to be tailored to Mike's personal vision, and the first band he would ever release through Fat Wreck would end up creating what I can only describe with the titular greatest punk album. 2 years before Punkin' Drublic, NoFX would be opened for by Winnipeg punk band Propagandhi. Being so impressed with their performance, Fat Mike would sign Propagandhi to Fat Wreck Chords, and in 1993, that decision paid off with their first album, How to Clean Everything. How to Clean Everything is particularly notable for being a widely agreed upon classic within punk as a genre. This is in spite of how strongly lead singer Chris Hanna disagrees with the placement. In an interview with Vice in 2015, Hanna would rank the album firmly last place in their discography, bluntly describing it as just dumb. "We were teenagers when we wrote those songs. I challenge anybody who is 45 to go back and dig out a book of poetry from high school to show it to the world. No, sing it to the world, when you've never even sung before. I mean, I get why people like it. It's a goofy, skippy, cartoonish, laughable, Blink-182-ish kind of record." When asked on how he reconciles its place as a classic despite his own opinions, Hanna said, "I guess I am at peace. I don't want to hear the record, but I see the practical value it has for our band still to this day." When creating their next album, Less Talk, More Rock, it's clear that it's a response to the people they'd attract from that first outing. The title track of the record being a call-out to homophobic frat bros who would infiltrate their audience despite the band's far-left progressive politics. Hanna starts the song by asking the toughest man to dance to it, and then talks about having an ironic, made-up, homosexual relationship with his friend for nearly his entire life.
Dance to this, you drink to me. My sexuality, with your hands down my pants by transitive property.
The final song, Refusing to Be a Man, is a poetic denouncement of his own perceived manhood, as he can't seem to reconcile his natural biological urges of lust and his ideologies against his internal sense of misogyny.
If everything desired is objectified, then maybe eroticism needs to be redefined. And I refuse to be a man.
I think the main purpose of Less Talk actually has a lot less to do with it being its own isolated artistic statement and a lot more concerned with what's next. Just as Heavy Petting Zoo had been for NoFX, it's what I'll call a response album. Rather than being tied to its own story, it's a reaction based on whatever had came before it. The same is not true for Propagandhi's third album, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. A review from Rate Your Music user Strizmatic says it best. 7 words. Has to be heard to be believed.
To get shit talk, huddled single file.
The first word that comes to mind when writing about empires is mastery. While Les Talk was proficient in its guitar work, especially with riffs like, "And we thought nation states were a bad idea," Empires obliterates it. I've never heard an album so fluidly combine thrash, hardcore, lush arrangements of sound, blast beats, and so much more. The themes of belittling performative politics put on display from Les Talk are exemplified even further on this album, as sung on standout song Back to the Motor League, a song about how Hannah would rather be forced to go back to his job at a travel agency instead of being a horseman of the sounds the counterculture would promote as the 2000s began. Another track making fun of what we today call performative males is Ladies' Night in Loserville, written from the perspective of a woman at a bar. True visionaries of their craft.
The dichotomy is crazy.
Not only did they talk back to the kids that would be buying the album, but they also wanted to push the ideologies they sang about. When loading the CD-ROM into a PC, you'd be greeted with 2 documentaries: To Disrupt, Discredit, and Destroy, the FBI's secret war against the Black Panther Party, and U.S. foreign policy and hypocrisy, both of which saw their respective topics outright sung about. All the way down to quoting FBI reports on the chorus. As I'm giving high praise to this album, ironically enough, that same Vice interview I'd quoted earlier would see the album placed right next to How to Clean Everything at 5th place. We as a band were just backseat drivers through the whole recording, mixing, and mastering part where we sonically ruined our own record. I just find it sonically not very listenable. He'd continue. I have the master tapes and I go and listen to those sometimes. I wish we could remix it, but nobody ever wants to hear a remixed 20-year-old record. What I find interesting is that I completely agree. This album, released in 2001, sounds really, really bad. Good thing they remixed that 20-year-old record. The 2021 remaster of Today's Empires really cannot be understated when taking in how expansive the record now feels. Jord's searing fills feel like they can finally breathe for the first time, and Hannah's guitar is powerful instead of just raspy. This is for sure the definitive edition of this album, and hearing the original on the bonus tracks of this release is just complete night and day. So, have you heard it? Love it? Hate it? What would you rate it? I've spent nearly a year and a half listening almost obsessively to this album, and it still hasn't grown old on me. I appreciate everyone's time watching, and I'll see you soon.